Hello, you stunningly gorgeous people of the internet. I'm kidding, you filthy animals. No, I'm also kidding about that. I just wanted to come at you today with a very sort of relaxed, reflection-driven video. I feel like in so many of these book videos all over the internet, we really focus on books that we loved so much, top 10s, definitive favorites. It's very easy to fall into that category, and I myself do that, so I can say that. But for me, I feel like there are so many books when I go through lists of books that I've read and just think back on books from a certain time period that I love that I don't really often find a way to incorporate in my videos. And so this is a video dedicated to those books that I loved, that I think about often, and that I just don't really find a way to just slide in and say, I loved you. You were a part of me. And you always will be. So let's talk about the main book. Oh, am I gonna sit weird? I'm gonna sit a little weird. No, I think that's gonna be distracting for everyone. Talk about the main book that inspired this, and that is The Seas by Samantha Hunt. When I tell you, I think about this book all the time. I'm not lying. I'm not lying at all. I think about this so often, especially because I just finished reading the shipping news for my Patreon book club. Check it out. We have a lot of fun. That is very nautical and maritime inspired, and this book is very much that, hence the name The Seas. Oh my God, this was so inspiring to me when I read it, and I feel like I always forget about it. I always forget about putting it in to these compilations of books that I read that feel like a certain thing. This felt like girlhood. This felt like exactly what I wanted, like a very internal sort of reappraisal of life sort of book. Such a great story. And I love it. I love it. But you know what I also love? Smelling great. Yes, I do. If you've been on this channel for a while, you know that that's true, and I'm not lying. And that is why I'm so happy to be partnering with Scentbird again on today's video. If you don't know what Scentbird is, it is a subscription-based perfume company that allows you to basically take scents on a test drive. I talk about books in little vignettes that kind of allows you to take it on a test drive, see if you like it. So why not do the same with your perfume? I am a huge fan of the perfume brand DS & Durga. I've kind of made it a little challenge to test out as many of their fragrances as I can, and lucky for me, they have DS & Durga on their website, and I was happy to be supplied 2 additional scents to add to my collection. This month I chose Coriander, which has top notes of coriander, juniper needle, musk, geranium, and clary sage. This scent is unbelievable, truly. I also got black magenta. Now, if that doesn't sound stylish, fashionable, and beautiful, I don't know what does. Top notes of this: pink pineapple, black pepper, orange flower, Balkan tobacco, and sandalwood. Everything a girl loves. I feel very enigmatic when I wear this. I feel like I put it on and people walk past and say, who is she? Which is exactly how I want to be addressed every single day of my life. It's so nice to be able to try the scents and to know that you aren't having to be straddled down with the price of a full bottle, which is unbelievable. They have high-end scents like Broder, but then they have a little bit more niche scents as well. So you can kind of explore and see what their page has to offer. Also, it is incredibly easy to travel with. When I was using their scents from last time, I brought them to Japan, and I was able to fit them into little pockets as I was walking throughout the day and needed a refresher. It is up to a 30-day supply that you have in the little vials, and trust me, it lasts a little bit longer, so you can kind of get away with extending it for a long period of time. So if you're interested in trying Scentbird, you can scan the QR code or use my code AWJ55 for 55% off your order, and you get free delivery right to your doorstep and these free cases. That is half off your order, so that comes down to $8. $8 for scents that are a lot more than that, trust me. So thank you so much again to Scentbird for making me feel fabulous and making me remember why I love the scents that I love. So the next book that I want to talk about is a book that I read quite a while ago, and again, it's something that I always think about I don't know if it's because I'm having this sci-fi revelation in my life or what is going on. I'm not sure, but that is Disruption, short fiction from Africa. I saw this in a bookstore and I was so intrigued by that cover, and I really enjoyed my time with it. This is all short stories from different countries within Africa. They basically, all of these writers from different countries were asked to write a story about climate, about the environment, and how they were able to basically interpret that prompt. I don't know why this arrested me as much as it did. I cannot get rid of the book for the life of me. I feel like it's something that I want to reread and see if it really was as kind of shifting for me, or if it just was so wild and absurd in its narrative that I just was like, whoa, I've never read anything like this before. But as I'm getting more into science fiction, I feel like this is due for a reread. I just think it's original, and I love those sorts of prompted writing that results in something that's actually quite good. I feel like sometimes it can be kind of bad, but this had a great end product, and I think about this all the time. I truly, maybe just that sci-fi was always in me, and this was a catalyst for that. Catalyst Press. The next one I want to talk about, and this one I think is just because it was very kind of similar to me, and that is Of the Farm by John Updike. I'd had this book for years. I'd had it forever, and I felt like I was never going to read it. I almost got rid of it, but then I said, it's just a little baby book. It's so small. I can read it. So I picked it up and I couldn't put it down. I had never read anything by Updike, but he was always an author that I wanted to get into, very prominent American author of a certain time period, and this book was definitely highlighting that. This is about a man who comes from a small town, but he works and lives in Manhattan. He's basically moved his entire livelihood there, and then he comes back to his small farmhouse where his mother lives, and he brings back a woman after having been divorced, and it's all about that fraught relationship, that what do we create of ourselves when we leave the place that is so formative and so indicative of who we become? What does that mean when we come back there and we expose how vulnerable we really are? This hit a lot of nerves with me. I am from a very small town, and I obviously live in the big city now. I live in a big city. So I feel a part of that in me. And this was just great writing. I mean, there's not a whole lot that happens in this book, but just great writing can take you so far, and I loved this. Okay, the next one is kind of a little cheat. I'm sorry, I have to cheat. I have to do it because I can, and it's my channel and I want to. This is a book that I read this year, and I already know that it's going to be on my best of for 2025. It's probably going to be a new favorite book, but I haven't really had a chance to talk about it to my wider audience. I picked this for my book club on Patreon, and I was just elated with this novel, Light Years by James Salter. I was prepping myself. I knew that I was going to like this. I was kind of primed to know that this was going to be a great book. At least the writing was going to be so ornamental and beautiful. But I don't think I was prepared for how much this resonated with me. Oh my goodness. This is about a couple living in 1950s America. They had previously lived in Manhattan, and then they relocated to upstate New York. And it's basically following the trajectory of the two, their marriage, their friends, the core of who they are as they go from 1950s America to 1970s, 1980s America. And what that does, who maintains the morale and the rigidity of the 1950s, and who kind of blossoms into a different individual as time goes on. This is so... I could cry thinking about how beautiful this novel is. This is such catastrophically gorgeous sentences without being too much, without feeling like there has to be a million commas to just put words together. It's just very sparse writing that just hits all the details, the emotional strings that need to be hit. And oh my God, this book moved me so much. Not so much happens, but I think if you're straddled in and you just follow the worlds of these people and you want to follow it, you'll be so rewarded. This is a fan fantastic book. So the last fiction book that I want to talk about is a fiction book that I used to sing its praises all the time on the channel, but I feel like I've kind of stopped talking about it. It was in my first favorite books of all time, and that is the book The Pisces by Melissa Broder. No, I've talked about this. This has been in a lot of videos, but I feel like if you're newer to this channel, you might not have heard it. Who knows? I don't know. Let's just talk about it again because I want to. This was my introduction to Melissa Broder, and maybe even introduction into very modern literary fiction in general. This book was kind of like one of the first books that I fell in love with on YouTube. It was something that I saw a lot of people talking about before I was kind of actively posting, and I gave it a shot and I loved it. I thought it was so much fun. I think it is a great way to show how valuable your words are and your storytelling is without taking yourself too seriously. This is about a woman who is in Los Angeles and she falls in love with a merman. It's wacky, it's weird, and I love that because it's showing that you can be a great writer and convey this ludicrous story and have your audience so captivated. I think that Melissa Broder is a genius. I've talked about how much I enjoy her as an individual, but I just wanted to talk about what really led me into it. And I guess this book has just a lot of positive memories for me as I was getting involved in the book space online. It really shows that people's opinions can really help you pick out a book. I mean, I wish I could give exact credit to who showed this book at first, but it was kind of all over for a little while. I feel like it blew up, as it should have. I feel like I don't talk about it as much as I used to, and I just wanted to bring it back up into that little sphere again. All right, now that I've radically shifted gears, we are going to be talking about nonfiction right now. So the first book for nonfiction for me is a book I literally think about all the time. I think about it all the time. I want to give it to people, but then I say, no, I don't want to give it to people because I want to get my edition back. And that is Susan Sontag, Regarding the Pain of Others. This was my first Susan Sontag. This was my first entrance into that arena, and I loved it. You've known her books, right? She has, I think, like On Photography, On Camp, basically just assessing these kind of niche ideas and looking at them from a very, what word am I looking for? A very, artistic lens? That's not the word. It's going to be cheap. That's not the word I wanted to use, but whatever. This is all about painful artwork and painful photography. Photography and artwork that shows just how horrific the human race can be and why we are so attracted to that, why we are so moved by that, and how we can look at it and see what's going on, but really not kind of pay attention, if that makes sense. I'm alluding to, she's talking a lot about war photography, for example, or photography that's showing very violent acts, or drawings that are showing demonic sort of presences. And this is going into how we're able to assess that in our world and kind of be desensitized to it. It's also talking about how narratives can be changed by the perception of the photograph. Things can be cut out, things can be altered. And it's so brilliant. It's very, very brief, so it doesn't feel like it's too much coming at you and you can't comprehend it in real time. It's short. You can look up the accompanying photographs if you feel strong enough, and it's so good. I loved this book, and I want to reread it and look up those photographs again. I feel like it would be great if you were doing art history and you needed some book to accompany a paper. This would be ideal. Also, I was wondering where this went. Amazon.com when it was just books. Look at that. Isn't that scary? Isn't that scary? Started as such a positive thing. Okay, so after that, sad book, but I think a great book. We're going to be talking about a memoir that used to be one of my favorite books of all time. I forget about it all the time, and then somebody brings up great memoirs and I say, oh my God, yes, this book kind of changed my life for a little while. And that is Art, Sex, Music by Cozy Fanny Tutti. Now, if you don't know who Cozy Fanny Tutti is, that's totally fine. She was a very prominent figure in the industrial music scene, in the art scene of, what was it, 60s, 70s, probably, 80s. She was part of the band Throbbing Gristle with Genesis Peorage of Psychic TV. If you know any of those bands or personalities, great. If you don't, that's fine. You don't necessarily have to be able to enjoy this memoir. This, I think, is just kind of looking at how people from a certain art scene kind of can grow up together, can become a family, and basically establish themselves in these fields. It shows how the way that we grow up definitely impacts the way that we present ourselves later in life, and it shows just how you kind of have the struggle and create art and create music and become something if you really have that desire and that passion to do so. I just think she's a cool girl, honestly. I just think she's cool. And she has a cameo in one of my favorite songs of all time, You Make Me Feel by Sylvester. So in my world, she's great, and I don't care. I don't care. Maybe not everybody's gonna love this book, but I loved it. It was eye-opening for me. Oleg found that on the side of the road for me. And again, was kind of on my reading journey. And it was a massive memoir, the version that I had. And I read it and I was like, whoa, crazy. So, yeah. And then after that, a book that kind of is similar, I would say, is The Dead Ladies Project by Jessa Crispin. This book did things for me that I needed to hear at the time. This is all about a woman who kind of packs her bags at age 30 and she travels throughout Europe and the Mediterranean. As she is exploring these places, she is simultaneously revealing parts of her life, the things that she's running from, the crutches that she relies on back home, and talking about people who were connected to that area, connected to the place that she's at, and how their work influenced her. It could have been writers, it could have been performance artists, it could have been psychologists, all these people that were prominent in the countries that she was visiting or the specific areas, and tying their history to the history that she was now making. I don't know, I would love to reread this, I think, just to see if it holds up. But at that time in my life, it was, oh my God, I loved it. For a while, it was one of my favorite books, and yeah, I think worth a reread. Hate that cover. That's ugly. And then, not to be outdone, we have The 90s by Chuck Klosterman. I am not like a huge Chuck Klosterman head. I don't really like, he's fine. I think I read Art, Sex, and Cocoa Puffs. Am I making that up? Or am I just really alluding it back to Art, Sex, and Music? I don't remember the name of it. I read that, and it's very like, I just imagine him like writing stuff and just really giving that sort of presence in the way that he's talking about stuff. And he kind of is, but I think that he did a lot of research and presented the 90s in a really comprehensive manner. I am a child of the 90s, but I was not old enough to experience it at all. I was baby. Definitely didn't know a lot of the things that happened in the 90s, and I've since learned them as I've become an adult. But I think it's so interesting to see our current framework of life and to see how important the 90s were in setting that blueprint down. Technology, pop culture, anything like that, that we basically kind of present ourselves as now. It's interesting to see what came before and what helped create that. He broke it down into very specific niches, so it was, you were able to kind of follow along loosely if you really, really loved the chapter he was talking about. Like sports, I really didn't care too much about, I'm sorry. But cinema, TV shows, books, music, I was all for it. All for it. And last but not least, hopefully I haven't bored you to death. Sorry. I want to talk about Black Swans by Eve Babbitt. I don't know why I'm not picking up the book, because I have it. I have it. Definitely want to reread this. I read this in California in 2022, right around the same exact time that I read East of Eden, and I feel like East of Eden overshadowed this quite a bit. This still made it on my favorites of that year. I feel like you're seeing a trend in the books that I like. I don't find an opportunity to talk about this that much. This is all Eve Babbitt's writing, reflection on who she was basically after she became sober, I believe. So it's looking into her life after that, the people that she knew. I think she's a really great fly on the wall analysis of things. And I carry this with me a lot. Whenever I look at this on my shelf, I have fond memories of it. So I want to go back, assess, see if I was right in the beginning, and kind of go from there. So that's it, y'all. That's it. Books that I love that I feel like I don't talk about enough. Maybe you remember me talking about these. Maybe you don't. And these are all new. And they're fun. And you're like, girl, I love them too. Yes, that's what I want to hear. Let me know books that you love that you're always forgetting about, and then you see it on your shelf and you're like, oh my God, yes, who was I before that book? I don't know, it changed me. I would love to hear it. You guys are wonderful, you're fabulous. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you